Welcome for our science lesson. We are going to look at the global effect of modern man, that is modern human, and our topic we are going to look keenly on adopting of conservation model. As we had looked earlier in the previous lesson, we were able to go through various principles that actually affect the modern environment, especially we looked at the effect of the greenhouse leading to the global warming. We looked at most of deforestation leading to desertification. We looked at the biocides, which are endangering the water bodies by silting, and so many other leading to algal bloom and eutrophication. Also, we were able to look at the key principles that needed to be developed so that we are able to live in an environment with compatible basic needs. These basic needs are actually supposed to be met without destroying the environment. And one of the key principles was actually to adopt intergenerational equity. That is where the present generation should be in a position to leave the next generation healthy and a diverse or productive environment. This one also helped us to understand the more of this concept. The second key principle was to look at the conservation of the biodiversity. Actually, when you look at the conservation of the biodiversity and ecological integrity, it should be a responsibility of every human. And therefore, even there should be some constraint on all economic activity so that they are in liaison with the development model of preserving the resources on our environment. Again, the third key principle was to observe the constant natural capital that is sustainable income. And that could only come, that can be sustained. In sustainable, we have to take care of indefinite sustainability that should be taken. No more of that. And again, in the administrative approach, people are supposed to make precautionary policy as they adopt their decision-making approach. And they should make their decisions basing on cautious proof that should be able to sustain the development that is going to be received later on whatever activity. And lastly, we are able to look at the pricing of environmental values, such as adopting natural resources to recover them full and their social environmental cost. Now, as we proceed with this lesson, we also have to adopt conservation model. Why? Because many human activities we have been able to find out, and will also be able to discover, they damage other forms of life, and that is biodiversity. Then what should we do? We have to adopt conservation model. That is conservation model. And what is this conservation? What is this conservation? When you look at it very carefully, from scientific point of view, you'll find that conservation is a careful maintenance, management, and preservation of the living things and natural resources to make sure that they are less harmful and there is a less effect on the natural world. How should we do this? We have to do this conservation by observing the following. We have to retain the natural resources. We have to retain natural environment. As you retain the natural environment, you are making it very much useful. And this natural environment may include such as we can have parks. If we have national parks and forests need to be retained. There is a reason and there is an importance to retain this natural environment so that when we retain them, we will be able to play a key role in intergenerational equity. Unless we retain, for example, the national parks or even our forests, or when we go and clear down our forests, or our animals in the national parks, the wild animals, when they are extinct, what are we going to hand over to the next generation? That will not be biodiversity. When we hand over such an environment that have an extinct wildlife species, trees, including both exotic and indigenous trees, then we will have done a harmful effect to the next generation. That is not the responsibility that we are talking about. We are talking about taking responsibility to manage and conserve our environment and all our resources in a very amicable manner. Also, another way, we have to use renewable energy resources. We have to use renewable energy resources. When we adopt the model of renewing most of our energy resources, and remember we had looked at the energy resources in the previous lesson just to be able to find out what are these renewable energy resources. We'll find them. We have solar energy, such as the solar energy. We also have the wind power and so many other. As we adopt this, we will be practicing what we call conservation and maintenance of our environment. Again, that is not only enough. We also have to look into another way of how to do it. We have to recycle materials whenever possible. We have to recycle the materials whenever possible. We make sure that all the materials that we are using, after using them, if they are rendered less useful, we have to convert them into more useful by recycling them. And it is very important when we become very careful on recycling. There are many opportunities that can be tapped in the recycling industry. And then we can come up with the various ways of recycling some of these materials so that we avoid exploiting more of the natural resources and the environment. We have to live the way it is in its natural state. And that becomes a better way. As much as we move on, why are our environment being depleted at a very high rate by human? You will find that because of an ever increasing population, actually population of human is increasing rapidly. What do we do about it? We have to control human population and growth. We take control of the human population and growth. If we just leave this responsibility, then we will not be human enough. It is only animals. But though animals are able to carry the control by the natural methods of in the natural setup of an ecosystem, we also have to find ways of controlling the human population. Unless we do that, when there is a rapid population growth in given environment, remember, the land surface remains constant. And as a result of that, being constant, it cannot increase. When population supersedes the environment or the place where their habitation is, then we'll be able to have found out that we will be exceeding the carrying capacity of that environment. And therefore, these are the conservation model as we adopt. There is a very important need for us to conserve the environment carefully. And how I would wish that let this be a responsibility of every individual. Whether you are old, whether you are young, whatever, in whichever age, let us learn to preserve and conserve our environment. It will be better. We will be making it a better place for us to stay. Remember, planet Earth is the only planet that has support of human life. Yet, we are yet to discover another one. Therefore, if we spoil our environment on planet Earth, then where shall we have to go? Life still needs to move on. Then, let's be sure also to look for ways of control of a very, very important resources, that is controlling of soil erosion. Control of soil erosion. As much as we have been able to exploit, various erosion under weathering and the types of erosion, but still there is a need for us to control soil erosion. We cannot just leave it the way it is. As we have already seen, soil erosion is the process by which the loose soil particles are being washed down by water, and sometimes they are blown by wind. And this is attributed by various human activities. Various human activities are the ones that have been attributed to the causes of soil erosion. There are various human activities, and perhaps we just have to be able to understand them, so that after knowing a certain problem, then scientifically we'll be able to give its diagnosis or to solve it. As we had looked earlier, bush clearing is one of the causes. And who does this? Bush clearing. When we begin clearing the bush, we have already begun. We ourselves as human beings have begun to cause soil erosion. And that one we covered it much when we looked at deforestation. That is deforestation. As a result of an increased population, many people will look for an opportunity to find a land to farm, or will be able to find places to establish industries and also build their habitation. As a result of that, you'll find that most bush that are in their natural setup, they are deforested. They are just cleared down carelessly in that manner, and therefore we are subjecting the soil on various agents of erosion, because initially soil, remember, has been covered by some of the vegetation which are very important. Another activity such as overgrazing. Overgrazing of animals in the field. This comes as a result of many animals being kept in a small portion of field, and because day in, day out, animals need pasture. As a result of that, periodically there is a repetition. Grazing on the same field will bring an essence of overgrazing. And in the same way as the animals are grazing in the field, some of them trembles on the soils, rendering them very loose and therefore exposing them to wind, which will easily blow and carry away the soil to other places. When we look the problem of overgrazing, overgrazing is as also a result of overstocking of animals. Overstocking of animals on the farm. When you do not have enough space for wider range of animals or herds of animals, then there will be excess animals in the same piece of land. That excess animals that are being kept on just a smaller portion of land, we call it overstocking. That is keeping animals on a small piece of land that exceeds its carrying capacity, and these animals keep on trampling over the soil, still exposing them to the agents of erosion. They can easily be carried away by the wind and water, therefore driving into various channels of erosion, bringing out various types of erosion such as rill erosion, gully erosion, splash erosions, and so many other. That one will render the soil infertile, and to a given level, it causes what we call soil degeneration. Now, some of these activities are very important to be looked upon and think again. Sometimes also some actions of industrialization. Industrialization and construction. When we are in this activity of construction, most of the activities that are done by human being, such as industrialization, that is expanding of the industry, expansion of the industries by making various forms of construction. This one is also a clear activity that will result into various forms of soil erosion. For example, when an industry is almost being established in a particular area. For example, in the New South Wales of Australia, an industry of copper or a factory of copper mining, what will be done is, first of all, we have to construct the mines. And before we construct, if the area was bushy, we will have to clear first. And that is deforestation. And as a result of that, we will use heavy machinery, such as the bulldozers and the mowers on the land. They move the earth, and sometimes they shake them, rendering the soil very loose. And as the soil becomes very loose, it is susceptible to erosion. It will be easily be carried away by wind and the rainfall. All this leads to what we call soil degeneration. All these activities always are leading to soil degeneration. And when we look at it, it involves various processes that takes away the soil nutrients and thus rendering soil infertile. And let us shortly look at the soil degeneration. When we look at the soil degeneration is the process which involves various processes that takes away the nutrients and thus rendering soil infertile. It is also the process of the soil losing its fertility. Therefore, it becomes useless. When soil becomes infertile, as a resource, then it becomes useless. But remember, we'll also be able to look at the soil as an entity of a natural resource that is always available. Most of the activities that are done by human beings, they are the one that causes soil degeneration, the process that leads to soil degenerations. Here, these various processes include the poor farming techniques, such as when you look at various poor farming techniques, such as tilling along the slopes of land, excessive use of fertilizer. These are the various methods or various processes, excessive use of fertilizer. Remember, excessive use of fertilizers and other chemicals, we refer to them as biocides. They lead to eutrophication in the ocean and also water bodies. And excessive use of biocides, plowing along the contours, leads to when we plow along the contours, we are actually allowing the soil to be taken away, and therefore in the process it will become infertile or it will be rendered useless. Therefore, when we look these various ways that lead to soil degeneration, and also there is another essence, the continuous growing of the same type of crop over a period of time. Continuous growing. That is continuous growing of the same type of crop or the same crop over a given period of time. For example, you can be growing crops such as bananas, or for example barley and wheat periodically over a period of time, year in, year out, year in, year out, and using heavy machinery. The same crop will take the nutrients that were available initially in the soil. And therefore, when the nutrients have been exhausted, still the soil will become infertile. And when the soil is infertile, most of it becomes very loose and unconsolidated. Therefore, as we have been able to look at this, because soil is an important physical and natural resource that we have been given, that is a place where all our human activities have been centered. We will also be able to look at this soil. Why is it very, very important? Remember, soil is made up of withered rock particles and humus that is made up of decaying of plants and animals. As a result of that, there are different types of soil. We have been able to find out that soil is obtained. It is made up of withered rock particles. These particles, when they are withered down and they are mixed up with the humus, this is the decayed plants and animals. Decayed plants and animals always will be able to mix up with the withered rock and form what we call loose and consolidated particles that are there always found on the earth crust. That is where we depend. But soil being a naturally available, when we look at it, it has been classified into various ways according to the amount of the fineness of the particles that are there. And this depends actually on the original rock. Also depends with the temperatures and the rain that is always available. We'll be able to just to mention them, such as we have various types of soil, such as the clay soil. We have sandy soil that is more porous. We also have loamy soil that is a mixture of silt. It is a mixture of silt and sand which are present. Therefore, these are the main various types of soils when we classify them according to the particles, the soil particles. This classification is based on the fineness of the particles that is there. But we have to look at it. It is these particles when they are formed in the process of weathering. In the process of weathering, the particles are broken down from the parent material that is available, and then it gives the soil its texture and porosity, such as sandy soil is actually more porous and do not hold water for a long period of time. When you look at the loam soil, is somehow rich in both sand and silt, and also comprises of some, it contains almost the equal amount of sand, silt and clay, including the humus. It brings what we call a mature soil. And when a soil is in that process, it produces what we call a mature soil profile. All soils that have been developed, they will always have a mature soil profile. And that one, mature soil profile is actually made up of the various horizons. It is made up of various layers that are always present. You will find that this is a cross section of the soil profile, and then it is made up of a layer of very fine particles that are always organized very fine. They are there, and then followed by another layer that is more simpler, though it is made up of some gravels of relatively large particles. These gravels are withered down from the rock, and then they are transported elsewhere to go and make a formation of a soil, and then thereafter we'll have somehow larger particles of rock that are still being broken down in various ways, but they are still undergoing what we call the stage of formation in various parts. And lastly, now we'll have the parent material itself. This is a rock that is cracking, therefore giving us various horizons of soil. You will find that these will be able to give us various horizons of soils, and this is where these green vegetations are trying to grow. They grow on what we call the topsoil. When we study soil, we'll be able to find out the first horizons or the layer is referred to as the topsoil, and then it is followed by subsoil. This is now where plant root penetrates and gets their minerals, and then we move to the withered rock. This is the withered rock, and lastly, the withered rock is formed from the parent rock or the bedrock. Therefore, a mature soil is made up of mainly 4 layers. We call them horizons. This is a soil that has matured. You can take or carry out an experiment to prove the same arrangement of these particles of the soil. Just take a sample of soil and then find something like a bottle top, just a bottle that is clear and transparent, and then collect various samples of soil and then put it in that bottle, and then add relative amount of water, just a halfway on that bottle top, and then shake it. When you shake it, leave it to settle for some time. You'll be able to have found out various layers being settling down according to the various proportions of the particles of the soils, showing that different soil have different layers. It is good you carry out that practical wherever you are, even in your class. Then you will discover a very important segment that we are looking at. Therefore, when you are able to look at the soil profile, which is matured, it has various elements, that is the composition. A mature soil profile having these different layers, such as the topsoil, we have a subsoil, we have the withered rock, and the parent rock. Will be able to have found it is composed of various organisms or various components. A mature soil is made up of various components. Just shortly to look at the various components of soil. What is this that makes up soil? Soil is composed of various components that will make it healthy. The soil system has 4 components that we are going to look at shortly here, just to highlight them. One is inorganic matter, inorganic minerals. We have inorganic mineral. Inorganic minerals, these are particles that are derived from, or just they are derived from the breakdown of the parent rock. They are derived from the breakdown of the parent rock. We call them the organic minerals. These inorganic minerals are actually broken down from the parent rock, and these minerals, because they were found in the parent rock helps the soil to have inorganic minerals such as zinc. We can also have magnesiums. These are inorganic minerals that can also be found in the soil. And then also we also have another component that is very important. We have organic matter. A healthy soil will always have what we call organic matter, or we call it soil organic matter. And when we look at the organic matter as part of the soil, these are organic components which are obtained from the plants and animal remains, including the microorganisms. When these plants and animals remains die, they undergo what we call decaying. They will lead to form an important part that is referred to as humus. Actually, when you look at the plants, when the plant leaves fall down on the ground, perhaps depending on the moisture content that is available in that environment with water, you will find that it will rot or decompose. And when it decomposes, it forms a very thin film of organic matter that is referred to as humus. These humus play a very important function in the soil, making the soil to be very much healthy. Soil is also composed of water. Water is always present in the soil and available. It is this that makes the soil to have an active living part of the earth. And the soil water, or water in the soil, is available in 2 forms here. We have hygroscopic water. That is hygroscopic water. And then the second form of water, that is available in the soil is referred to as the superfluous water. These forms of water that are available, they make the soil healthy because they support the microorganisms that are living there. And when you are also able to look at that, another component is always available, that is air. We also have air as a component of soil, which always provide the necessary condition for other living microorganisms to be able to live in the soil. When you look at the air, it is also available in the soil. Therefore, these components make the soil a living biodiversity. It makes the soil healthy and living. When soil do not have these components, then it is as well as an infertile soil. It is a dead soil. Therefore, the soil will not be able to produce whatever you want it. And remember, it is the backbone of which all agricultural activities or farming activities are carried on. They are carried on the soil. Therefore, it is important we are able to understand that these organic minerals make the soil healthy, such as zinc and magnesium, which are obtained from the withered parent rock of the soil. And then we have organic matter. These are the dead plant cells and animals that go and rot to form what we call humus. That is a thin film that is always found in the soil, making the soil more healthier because it balances the soil warmth, and therefore water is also available in the soil. Water is the one that provides the essentials, conditions to make either any of the plant to grow and germinate, and it exists in the soil in two forms, that is hygroscopic water and the superfluous water. And initially also finally we have the air. Now, we have been able to look at these components of soil. When you look at the components of soil, having found out that soil is made up of various components, then how is soil formed? It is important we study and we are able to know how is soil formed. Actually, just from the initial aspect, from the withered rock material, from the withered rock, we are able to obtain soil. But do we have any other way in which soil is formed? This is just one way in which soil is formed. There are various processes that leads to the formation of soil. And as we are able to get to weathered rock, therefore one of the processes is referred to as weathering. The process of soil formation is weathering. And that one already we have some understanding about weathering. It is simply the breaking down of rock particles into loose and fine particles so as it's available to cover the earth crust. That is very important. Therefore, weathering becomes one of the processes. Remember, when we are able to go back and remind ourselves, weathering takes place in various ways. And we have various forms of weathering. It includes physical weathering. We have chemical weathering, and also we also have that is biological weathering. Yeah, these forms of weathering, they are the ones that are involved, and it is important after looking at them then we are able to find out that weathering takes place after various processes leading to the soil formation. Another second process over which soil is formed after weathering, there is what we call decomposition. Those particles of soils are decomposed. This involves various organic matter which takes place in the soil. As the soil decomposed, it goes, and this organic matter that are obtained either from the dead organic organisms of both plants and animals, then when they die, they are brought together to hold these soil particles and cement now a soil, so that later the soil will have what we call a soil structure. And this process of decompositions actually is enhanced in two ways, because one way where there are dead living organisms, those living organisms of both animals, they have minerals. Therefore, the soil will undergo what we call mineralization. And then, biologically, the leaves of those animals, the leaves of plants, the leaves of plants die and they are decomposed. When they undergo compositions, they undergo what we call humification. When the process of humification has been complete, then we'll find mineralization comes in, and the soil is added and made lively, and other various ways. When you look at these different ways in which soil is formed, from weathering processes and decompositions, where mineralization and humification takes place, you will also be able to find out that these various processes, they depend on various factors. These various processes depend on various factors. When we look at all these processes, they determine they are determined by some factors which are very important. The factors that always leads to formation of soil. There are various factors that play a major role in the soil formation, and therefore these factors will also always affect the soil. And one of it we have been able to look at, or we are going to look at, is the nature of the parent rock. Look at the nature of parent rock. After looking at the rocks in the previous lessons, different levels, you will find that rock naturally, it is made up of various characteristics, and that gives its nature. We'll find out that a given rock in its nature, because it exists, is made up of it is actually soft, and other rocks are very hard. Therefore, the nature of rock being subjected to the process of weathering will determine how long the soil will have take to mature. Nature of the rock, you'll find that the parent materials will determine the type of soil that is going to be formed in the long run process. This will affect the type of soil in the process, in the long run process of weathering, because remember we have different types of rocks. We have that is igneous rock, we have sedimentary rocks, and we have metamorphic rocks. And these rocks have in nature, we can either have a soft rock such as shell, and other rocks are very hard, such as igneous, or actually the basalt. This will determine the type of soil that is going to be formed when we base on the nature of the rock. And then another factor that is quite important is the climate. We will be able to look at climates in the next lesson, just at a given extent. The climate of an area determines the way in which the weathering process of rocks will take place. For example, in the tropical regions where there is a lot of precipitation, the rate of chemical weathering is very high because the water is mixed up with the carbon, forming acidic water or acidic dissolved organic matter that go and filter on the rock surface, therefore corroding that rock and therefore disintegrating it into various particles. While in the tropical desert or in dry regions, you'll find that the process of rock formation only depends on the physical weathering that is being subjected to great heat and pressure. Therefore, expansion and contracting of the rock in the long runs make the rock to peel off and therefore form some particles which there is no available maybe organic matter that are derived from the leaves and animals or maybe vegetation's matter to humidify the soil and make it soil. It will still be the withered rock. Therefore, climate also determines the nature and the type of rock. Another factor that is also affecting the soil is the topography. When we look at the topography, topography refers to the slope of the nature of the slope. How is the slope aligning? Because when you look at the earth crust, it is made up of various nature of the slope. That is when you look at the topographical part of the earth, there is a steep slope, there is an undulating slope. We also have a plain, just a flat base, and sometimes we have high hills and valleys. Those define the topography of the land. Therefore, the nature of the slope will also affect the ability of the water to drain through the soil. For example, on the hill slopes, when we subject this is a small hill, when we subject this hill to the process of soil formation, you will find that on top of this hill, where on these parts that are marked A, B, and C, where do you think we will have a well-drained soil? Because this refers to the slope. On part A, there is a very thin soil. We can have thin, and actually this is actually rocky. Here we'll have very thin soil that is still immature. It is not well developed. And then here we will find that the particles of soils are going to be formed here is where you'll be able to have found out that the soil is going to be matured and to be well drained. This brings us to understanding that on the bottom of the hills, that is on undulate, gentle sloping slopes, we will have deep and well drained soil that have been formed because water is able to drain into this soil, making it readily available as a healthy soil to support vegetation. Another factor that we will not be able to forget is the time. Time becomes an important factor that determines soil formation. When you look at the duration over which the soil takes to be formed, the duration of soil formation affects its characteristic. When soils takes longer time, the soil will be generally deep and they will be well drained and fertile. But that soil which has taken a shorter duration to be formed, that kind of soil is immature, first of all, and it is not well drained, and eventually it is not very fertile. Such soil cannot support your activity, especially the farming activity, because an infertile soil does not support the growth of many other forms. This brings us to find out and finalize this pattern of looking the soil into details. And when we classify this soil, we'll be able to have come up with 3 categories. Categories of soil. And after bearing or understanding the factors that leads to soil formation, we are able to come up with another category of soil, and this is simply a zonal soil. We have a zonal soil. This is we categorize the soil according to the order. The order, that is, means we have been able to look at the time, the duration over which the soil have been taken to be formed. Zonal soils are the youngest soil. Zonal soils are the youngest soil. They are very youngest and they are immature. This type of soil is immature. They are immature soil which do not have a distinct characteristic, neither does it have a well-developed soil profile, because most of it is found on the steep slope of the mountains. An example of this type of soil that is in a zonal order, we have the littorsols. We also have rigosols. After rigosols, we have the flaviosols. And also, lastly, we have arenosols. These are just example of soils which are very young in the zonal order. Then we also have the zonal soils. We have the zonal soils. We have the zonal soils. These are just type of soils which are able to form, they have been formed after a long period of time, and they are mature. They have a well-developed soil profiles whose characteristics can easily be seen and can be determined by the climate and the regulations of the condition of such environment. And example of these soils include the podzols. We have the podzols. We have the podzolic soil. It is podzolic soil. We also have what we call the tundra pedicles and chanozems. The tundra soils, we also have pedicles. They have also their characteristics, and chanozems. These are various forms of soils, example of soils that can be found under the zonal soil, that is category number 2. And then the last category, we have intrazonal soils. The intrazonal soils, they are a soil that have also a well-developed soil profile, although it is not found in any particular climatic regions because of the vegetation zones, and most of this soil is found in area that have poor drainage system. Such soils include hydromorphic. Example is hydromorphic soils. We also have calcimorphic and andosols. The calcimorphic soils, that is full of calcium and andosols, because of various reasons, especially that are found in poorly drained areas. Therefore, we can be able to have found that these is the categories of soils, and in the formation of soil, we can be able to classify them in this manner. Having looked at this, therefore, it is important in the next lesson we look how these soils lose their fertility and preserve them. That is what we call soil conservation. Thank you.